That's right, gotta catch 'em all. It was a phrase burned into our brains back in the early days of Pokemon. But the Johto gym leaders, when given the opportunity to show off some of these brand new creatures, revealed themselves to be a bunch of Gen 1ers. Because how else can you explain why so many of them have teams without a single Johto Pokemon? Generation 2 introduced 100 new Pokemon, many of which would have been perfect for them to use. I mean, Bugsy was reduced to using a Metapod and Kakuna for crying out loud. But I think we can do better. So, in this video, I'm going to go through each team as they existed in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and rework them to only use Pokemon first introduced in the Johto region. Now, with all that out of the way, let's start things off by taking a look at Falkner, the Violet City gym leader. Now this is one that always confused me. Rather than showing off the new early route bird Pokemon of this region, he simply uses the ones from last generation? What? That makes no sense. His new team gives him a Hoothoot and a Noctowl. Now this is much better, and what I always assume his team is going to be until I see him send out that Pidgey. Two respectable choices for a flying type gym leader in the Johto region. Next up is Bugsy, who got the short end of the stick when it comes to team composition. Johto has several early game bug types he could be using instead of a Metapod and Kakuna, so I replaced them both with Ladybug and Spinarak, which just makes a lot more sense. Then we have Scyther, which is really cool, but you know what's even cooler? Its evolved form Scizor, which was introduced this generation. That may make his team a little overpowered, which is probably why they didn't give him a Scizor originally. But at level 17, it shouldn't be too bad. And I really like the look of this team, so I'm sticking with it. We then move on to Whitney, and her infamous Miltank, which is actually a Johto Pokemon, as well as my sleep paralysis demon. But for the first time we can leave a team member in place, and only make a few minor changes. First, I'm devolving her Clefairy into a Cleffa. I know it's the weaker option, but it was first introduced in Generation 2, so it fits. But then I'm also going to add a third team member in the form of Teddiursa. Not only is it a normal type, but it's really cute, so it matches her personality and seems like a Pokemon Whitney would have on her team. Then, of course, the third and final member remains Miltank. I'm also increasing its level to keep things interesting. That's one thing I'm trying to do for most of these teams going forward. Adding members and increasing their levels where appropriate, to create a slightly harder challenge for the player. But now let's head on over to Ecruteak City and Morty. This one was a little interesting. Generation 2 only added a single new ghost type Pokemon. If I want to keep things Johto only, I'm going to have to get creative. So I'm changing Morty from being a ghost type gym leader to being a ghost and dark type gym leader. The dark type was introduced this generation, so I think it works and gives me several more Pokemon to work with. But with that in mind, the team I've chosen is Houndour, Sneasel, and Misdreavus. I reduced his number of Pokemon from 4 to 3, but increased their levels to compensate. So I think it works out nicely and should provide a decent challenge. And with that, we've reached the halfway point. So I just want to take a moment to ask you to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Subscribing is free and lets me know you're enjoying my content. Now on to the next gym. The Cianwood City Gym Leader Chuck specializes in fighting types, which we don't have a ton to choose from. But I think I was able to create a pretty good team. For this one, I'm going to go with Tyrogue at level 25, Heracross at level 30, and to round things off, Hitmontop at level 32. Tyrogue was a new pre-evolution introduced in Generation 2, so it fits nicely. Then we have Heracross, which I almost used for Bugsy, but due to the limited number of fighting types, I decided to save it for now. And last, we have Hitmontop, and one of the evolutions for Tyrogue. I was always shocked he didn't have a Hitmontop originally, since it would have made a lot of sense. Not like I had a bunch of options or anything, but I think this is an awesome looking team for a fighting type gym leader. Next is the steel type gym leader, Jasmine, this generation introduced several steel types, so I think we could do better than 2 Magnemites. I decided to replace them with a level 32 Skarmory and a level 35 Fortress. Lastly, she can keep her Steelix, but with a slight level increase up to 38. I can't believe I'm at the 6th gym leader, and this is only the 2nd time a leader's ace was a Generation 2 Pokemon. If they would have kept it to a mix of Kanto and Johto Pokemon for most of the leaders, I could have forgiven it a little. But half of them just stick to all Kanto mons, which just always confused me. I know Johto and Kanto are geographically connected, so some overlap is understandable. But come on, this is ridiculous. Anyway, now that Jasmine has been sorted out, let's move on to the Ice-type leader, Price. His first 2 Pokemon, Steel and Dugong, will have to go, but luckily Piloswine can stay. I also decided to bump him up from 3 Pokemon to 4, since he's the 7th gym leader, and 3 just felt too low for this late in the game. His new team will consist of Smoochum at level 30, Windup at level 34, Delibird at level 37, and lastly his Piloswine at level 40. I like this team composition, as it's another way to show off one of the new baby Pokemon, and throwing in Piloswine's pre-evolved form also felt like the right move. Then Delibird, while not the strongest Pokemon, fits nicely in his team. I considered using Sneasel, but chose to give it to Morty instead. I also increased their levels a little, to make them worthy of being owned by the 7th gym leader. Now we finally arrived at the final gym leader, Claire. I had to deviate from her original typing quite a bit for this one. She's supposed to be the Dragon gym leader, but there are barely any new dragons this generation except for Kingdra, so that one will stay on her team for sure. But I decided to make her a mixed type gym leader, and just build her a really powerful team filled with strong Pokemon, to really give the player a challenge. So, I went with Crobat at level 38, Quagsire at level 40, Blissey at level 45, Kingdra at level 48, and lastly Tyranitar at level 55. Now this is quite the team, and one perfect for the final gym. It's filled with some powerhouses and should make the player sweat a little. I decided to make her ace a level 55 Tyranitar, since it's the pseudo-legendary of this generation, and while not a dragon type, it kinda looks like a dragon. But mostly the types are all over the place for this team, and it's just a really good final challenge before heading off to the Elite Four. You have to bring your A game, plus some well-trained Pokemon, to take her down. Well, there you have it. This was a fun video to put together, and I hope you enjoyed it. I've had this idea rattling around my brain for a while now, so I'm glad I was finally able to bring it to life. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, consider checking out one of these playlists for some more awesome videos. But I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.